The evening began like any other grand affair hosted by Ryan Carter, the billionaire businessman whose name was synonymous with success. His penthouse in Manhattan sparkled under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. The space was alive with laughter, clinking glasses, and the hum of conversation. Men in tailored suits and women in dazzling gowns moved gracefully through the room, their voices mingling with the faint strains of classical music played by a live string quartet. Ryan stood near the center of it all, exuding confidence as he greeted his guests. He was tall with sharp features that matched his razor-sharp mind. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his charcoal gray suit fit him like it had been stitched just for this occasion, which, knowing Ryan, it probably had. A glass of champagne dangled loosely from his fingers as he exchanged pleasantries with some of New York's most influential figures. Tonight's event wasn't just another party. It was a celebration of Ryan's latest business venture. He had recently acquired a cutting-edge tech company, further solidifying his status as one of the richest men in the world. Everyone wanted to be seen here tonight, eager to bask in the glow of his seemingly endless success. But despite the admiration surrounding him, there was something hollow about it all. Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was missing. As the clock ticked past 9 o'clock, the energy in the room shifted subtly. Guests began glancing toward the entrance, murmuring among themselves. Ryan noticed too, turning his head slightly to see what had caught everyone's attention. That's when he saw her. Laura Bennett walked into the penthouse without hesitation, her presence commanding even in a sea of extravagance. She wore a simple red dress that hugged her figure, its elegance standing out against the over-the-top glamour of the other guests. Her blonde hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders, framing a face that hadn't changed much since the last time Ryan had seen her. If anything, she looked more striking now, her green eyes holding a quiet determination. But it wasn't Laura alone who drew the stares. It was the two small boys clinging to her hands. They were identical twins, both with sandy blonde hair and bright blue eyes that mirrored Ryan's own. They looked nervous, their heads darting around as they took in the opulence of the room. One boy tugged gently on Laura's hand, whispering something only she could hear. Ryan froze, his champagne glass halfway to his lips. Time seemed to slow down as his mind raced to make sense of what he was seeing. Who were these children? Why did they look so familiar? And why was Laura here after all these years? Before he could process further, Laura stepped forward, weaving through the crowd with purpose. The twins followed close behind, their little shoes making soft sounds against the polished marble floor. Conversations hushed as people turned to watch, sensing that something significant was about to unfold. When Laura reached Ryan, she stopped, meeting his gaze steadily. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, with a calmness that belied the chaos brewing beneath the surface, Laura said, "Ryan, I'd like you to meet your sons." The words hung in the air like thunderclouds before a storm. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and several guests quickly raised their phones to capture the moment. Ryan blinked, certain he'd misheard her. What?" he managed to choke out, his voice barely above a whisper. Laura gestured to the boys beside her. "This is Ethan," she said, placing a hand on the shoulder of the boy on her left. "And this is Liam." She glanced at Ryan, her expression unwavering. "They're yours." Ryan felt the weight of the room pressing down on him. Every pair of eyes was fixed on him, waiting for his reaction. His mind scrambled to reconcile what Laura was saying with everything he thought he knew about his life. He looked at the boys again, really looked at them. Their faces were round and innocent, but there was no denying the resemblance. The shape of their eyes, the curve of their smiles. It was as if someone had taken pieces of him and Laura and put them together. "How?" Ryan started, then trailed off, unsure where to begin. Laura crossed her arms, her tone firm but not unkind. "We'll talk later. Not here." For once, Ryan didn't argue. He nodded stiffly, gesturing for her to follow him. As he led Laura and the twins away from the prying eyes of his guests, he couldn't help but notice the way the boys clung to their mother, their tiny hands gripping hers tightly. It was clear they trusted her completely. Once inside his private office, a sleek, modern space lined with bookshelves and framed awards. Ryan closed the door firmly behind them. The noise from the party faded into the background, leaving an eerie silence in its place. "Explain," Ryan demanded, his voice low but laced with emotion. Laura sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I found out I was pregnant shortly after we broke up. I didn't tell you because I didn't think you'd want to be involved." Ryan stared at her, disbelief written all over his face. "You didn't think I'd want to know I had children?" "It's complicated," Laura replied, her voice softer now. "You were always so focused on your career, your empire. I didn't want our kids growing up in that kind of environment." Ryan opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. Instead, he turned his attention to the boys, who were watching him curiously from behind Laura's legs. They looked so small, so fragile. "What are their names again?" he asked finally, his voice quieter than before. "Ethan and Liam," Laura repeated. "Ethan's the older one by 3 minutes." Ryan knelt down slowly, bringing himself closer to their level. "Hi, guys," he said, forcing a smile. "I'm your dad." The words felt strange on his tongue, foreign and unfamiliar. But, as Ethan tilted his head to study him, and Liam peeked out shyly from behind his brother, Ryan felt something stir deep within him. Something he hadn't felt in a very long time, a flicker of hope. Outside the office, the party continued, oblivious to the seismic shift that had just occurred. Inside, however, Ryan's world had been turned upside down, and nothing would ever be the same again. The silence in Ryan's office felt heavy, like a storm about to break. Laura stood near the window, her arms crossed tightly over her chest as if trying to shield herself from the weight of what she'd just revealed. The twins, Ethan and Liam, sat close together on the leather couch, their small legs dangling off the edge. They looked back and forth between their mother and this stranger who claimed to be their father, confusion written all over their faces. Ryan leaned forward in his chair, his elbows resting on his knees. He rubbed his temples, trying to process everything Laura had told him. His mind raced with questions, so many questions, but he didn't know where to start. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "Why now?" he asked, his voice low but steady. "Why come here tonight? After all these years?" Laura hesitated before answering. She turned away from the window, meeting his gaze directly. "Because I don't have a choice anymore," she admitted quietly. "Ethan, he needs help." Ryan frowned, glancing at the boys again. Ethan was fidgeting with the hem of his shirt while Liam stared down at his shoes, avoiding eye contact. "What kind of help?" Ryan pressed. Laura sighed, sitting down on the edge of the couch next to Ethan. She placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "He has a rare condition, a genetic disorder that affects his immune system. It's manageable, but the treatments are expensive, and lately—" Her voice cracked slightly and she paused to compose herself. "Lately, things have gotten worse." Ryan's heart sank as he watched her struggle to hold back tears. For all his wealth and power, he suddenly felt helpless. He wanted to fix this, to make everything right, but he didn't even know where to begin. "How long have you known?" he asked softly. "Since he was 3, Laura replied. "I've done everything I can to keep him healthy, but it's been hard, really hard. Working 2 jobs, moving from place to place so we could afford better schools or doctors. I never asked for anything from you because I thought I could handle it on my own. But now—" She shook her head, tears spilling onto her cheeks. "Now I can't do it anymore." Ryan sat back in his chair, overwhelmed by guilt and regret. He had spent years building his empire, chasing success and convincing himself he didn't need anyone else. But now, faced with the reality of the family he never knew he had, he realized how empty that success truly was. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "I should have been there. For all of you." Laura wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "It's not just about being sorry, Ryan. It's about stepping up now. These boys, They deserve a chance to live normal lives, to grow up without constantly worrying about whether they'll get sick or if we can afford the next treatment. Ryan nodded slowly, determination replacing the shock in his eyes. "Tell me what I need to do," he said firmly. For the first time since arriving, Laura allowed herself a small smile. "First, we need to focus on Ethan. There's a specialist in Boston who might be able to help, but the consultation alone costs thousands. Then there's medication, therapy, tests. It adds up quickly." "I'll take care of it," Ryan promised without hesitation. Whatever it takes. But as much as Laura appreciated his willingness to help, she wasn't ready to let him off the hook completely. "Money isn't enough, Ryan. They're your sons. They need more than just financial support. They need a father." Ryan glanced at the boys again, feeling a pang of uncertainty. How could he possibly step into that role after being absent for so long? What did he even know about being a dad? "I don't expect you to figure it out overnight," Laura added, sensing his hesitation. "But you owe it to them and to yourself to try." Over the next hour, they talked more about the boys' lives, their favorite foods, hobbies, and quirks. Ethan loved puzzles and science experiments, while Liam was obsessed with dinosaurs and drawing. Both were shy around strangers, but fiercely loyal to each other. As the conversation went on, Ryan found himself growing more comfortable, or at least less awkward, around them. At one point, Ethan tugged gently on his sleeve. "Are you really our dad?" he asked innocently. Ryan knelt down to meet his gaze. "Yes, buddy. I am." Ethan studied him for a moment, then nodded solemnly. "Okay." That single word carried so much weight, filling Ryan with both pride and responsibility. He reached out hesitantly, ruffling Ethan's hair. To his surprise, Ethan didn't pull away. Instead, he gave a tiny smile, which made Ryan's heart swell. Later that night, after Laura and the boys left, Ryan remained in his office, staring out at the city lights. His thoughts were a whirlwind of emotions: guilt, anger, hope, fear. But one thing was clear: his life would never be the same again. For years, he had defined himself by his achievements, his wealth, and his reputation. But now, standing at the crossroads of his past and future, he realized something important. None of those things mattered if he couldn't share them with the people who truly mattered. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Rebuilding trust with Laura and earning the love of his sons would take time, effort, and patience. But for the first time in a long time, Ryan felt a sense of purpose beyond profit margins and boardroom victories. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. When the call connected, he spoke with authority. "Cancel all my meetings tomorrow. I have somewhere else I need to be." As he ended the call, Ryan took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenges to come. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. He was determined to be the father his sons deserved, even if it meant starting from scratch. The next morning, Ryan woke up earlier than usual. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, sipping coffee as he watched the sun rise over Manhattan. His mind was still buzzing with thoughts of Ethan, Liam, and Laura. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about stock prices or business deals. Instead, he thought about how to be a father. He had arranged to meet Laura and the boys at Central Park that afternoon. It wasn't much, but it was a start. A chance to spend time with them outside the pressure of his world. As he got ready, he felt nervous, like he was stepping into uncharted territory. What if they didn't like him? What if he said or did something wrong? When he arrived at the park, he spotted them immediately. Laura was sitting on a bench under a tree, her hair catching the sunlight. The twins were nearby, playing with a frisbee. They looked happy, carefree, and completely different from the shy boys he'd met in his office the night before. Ryan approached slowly, giving them a small wave. "Hey," he said, smiling cautiously. Laura looked up and nodded. "You made it." "Of course," Ryan replied. He turned his attention to the boys. "What are you guys doing?" "Throwing the frisbee," Liam exclaimed, holding it up proudly. Ryan knelt down to their level. "Mind if I join?" Ethan hesitated for a moment, then shrugged. Okay. For the next hour, they played together. At first, it was awkward. Ryan wasn't used to running around or laughing so freely, but soon he found himself enjoying it. He chased after the frisbee, pretended to trip when Liam threw it too hard, and even managed to coax a laugh out of Ethan. Afterward, they spread out a picnic blanket and sat down to eat sandwiches and snacks Laura had brought. Ryan noticed how Ethan kept glancing at him curiously, while Liam seemed more focused on drawing pictures in a notebook. "What are you working on there, buddy?" Ryan asked, leaning closer to see. "Dinosaurs," Liam said without looking up. Ryan grinned. "Cool. Any favorites?" "Tyrannosaurus Rex," Liam replied confidently. "Well, that's a classic," Ryan said, nodding. "Big teeth, scary roar. Pretty impressive." Liam finally looked up, his eyes lighting up. "Do you know anything else about dinosaurs?" Ryan chuckled. "Not really, but we can look them up later if you want." Liam nodded enthusiastically, and Ryan felt a small victory. Maybe this wouldn't be as hard as he thought. As the day went on, Ryan tried to engage both boys equally. With Ethan, he talked about science experiments and puzzles, discovering that they shared an interest in problem-solving. With Liam, he encouraged his creativity, asking questions about his drawings and offering suggestions. But despite these moments of connection, Ryan could sense the distance between them. They were polite, even friendly at times, but there was still a wall, a barrier built over years of absence. Later, as they packed up to leave, Laura pulled Ryan aside. "You're doing okay," she said quietly. "Just okay," Ryan joked, though he appreciated the encouragement. "It's going to take time," Laura reminded him. "They've spent most of their lives without you. You can't expect them to trust you right away." "I know," Ryan admitted, "but I want to try, really try." Laura studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Good, because they need that from both of us." Over the following days, Ryan made an effort to include the boys in his life. He invited them to visit his penthouse, where they explored every corner with wide-eyed wonder. He took them to museums, zoos, and even a baseball game. Each outing brought new opportunities to learn about them, and for them to learn about him. At first, Ethan remained reserved, watching Ryan closely as if waiting for him to make a mistake. But gradually he began opening up, sharing stories about school and his favorite science projects. Liam, on the other hand, embraced Ryan almost immediately, eager to show off his dinosaur drawings and ask endless questions about everything. Through it all, Ryan couldn't help but notice how much joy the boys brought into his life. For years, he had been consumed by work, chasing success without ever stopping to enjoy the little things. Now he found himself laughing more, feeling lighter, and rediscovering parts of himself he had forgotten existed. However, not everything was perfect. There were moments of tension, especially between Ryan and Laura. While she appreciated his efforts, she remained cautious, wary of letting him get too close too quickly. She worried that once the novelty wore off, he might disappear again. "You're doing great with them," she told him one evening after the boys had gone to bed. "But don't forget why we're here. This isn't just about bonding, it's about helping Ethan." "I haven't forgotten," Ryan assured her. "I'm arranging for him to see the specialist in Boston next week, and I've already set up a fund to cover all his medical expenses." Laura nodded, though her expression remained guarded. "Thank you. But remember, money isn't enough. They need stability, consistency. If you're serious about being part of their lives, you have to commit fully." Ryan met her gaze, his voice steady. "I am serious. More than I've ever been about anything." Though Laura didn't say it aloud, she wanted to believe him. She saw the changes in him. The way he smiled more, the way he listened intently. When the boys spoke, the way he seemed genuinely interested in being a better person. Still, she couldn't shake the fear that lingered in the back of her mind. What if this was all temporary? What if Ryan lost interest once the initial excitement faded? For now, though, she decided to focus on the present. The boys were happy, and that was what mattered most. One evening, as Ryan tucked Ethan and Liam into bed at Laura's apartment, he paused to watch them sleep. Their faces were peaceful, their breathing slow and steady. He felt a lump form in his throat, overwhelmed by the realization that he loved them, not because they were his sons, but because they were themselves. As he turned off the light and closed the door behind him, he knew he had a long journey ahead. But for the first time in years, he felt hopeful. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them. For Ethan, for Liam, and for the family he was determined to build. The day of Ethan's appointment with the specialist in Boston arrived sooner than anyone expected. Ryan had arranged everything, the flights, the hotel, the consultations. But as they prepared to leave, he couldn't shake the feeling of unease settling in his chest. This wasn't just another business trip. This was about his son's health, and the stakes felt impossibly high. Laura, Ethan, Liam, and Ryan boarded the private jet Ryan had chartered for the occasion. It was luxurious, with plush leather seats and wide windows overlooking the runway, but no one seemed to notice. Ethan clutched his favorite puzzle book tightly, while Liam doodled quietly in his notebook. Laura sat by the window, staring out at the clouds forming in the distance. Ryan took a seat across from them, glancing at each member of his newfound family. "You guys okay?" he asked gently. Ethan nodded, though his grip on the puzzle book tightened. Liam looked up briefly and gave a small shrug. "I guess. It'll be fine," Ryan said, forcing a confident tone. "We're here to help Ethan feel better, remember?" Laura added softly. "And we'll all be with you every step of the way." Ethan managed a weak smile, which made Ryan feel a little less anxious. He reached over and ruffled Ethan's hair playfully. "That's my guy." When they landed in Boston, a car was waiting to take them to the hospital. The building was sleek and modern, its walls lined with calming artwork and soft lighting, designed to ease patients' nerves. Still, as they walked through the lobby, Ethan's hand slipped into Ryan's, gripping it tightly. "Are you scared?" Ryan whispered, bending down to meet Ethan's gaze. "A little," Ethan admitted. "That's okay," Ryan reassured him. "I'm scared too, but we're going to get through this together, all right?" Ethan nodded again, his blue eyes shining with trust. Ryan felt a surge of determination. Whatever happened next, he would do everything in his power to make sure Ethan got the care he needed. The consultation began with Dr. Patel, a warm and professional woman who specialized in rare, genetic disorders. She greeted the family warmly before leading them to an examination room. While Ethan sat on the table, she asked questions about his symptoms, reviewed his medical history, and performed a series of tests. As Dr. Patel worked, Ryan stayed close to Ethan, offering words of encouragement whenever the boy seemed nervous. Laura watched silently from the corner, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Even Liam remained unusually quiet, sensing the gravity of the moment. After nearly 2 hours, Dr. Patel stepped back and offered a small smile. "We'll need to run some additional tests to confirm, but I believe we can develop a treatment plan that will significantly improve Ethan's quality of life." Relief washed over Ryan and Laura simultaneously. For the first time since arriving, they allowed themselves to breathe a little easier. Later that evening, as they settled into their hotel suite, Laura pulled Ryan aside. "Thank you," she said sincerely, "for making today happen. For being here." Ryan shook his head. "Don't thank me. This is where I'm supposed to be. With them. With you." Laura hesitated, searching his face for any sign of insincerity. All she found was honesty. Over the next few days, the family explored Boston together, trying to balance the stress of Ethan's appointments with moments of normalcy. They visited museums, strolled along the waterfront, and shared meals filled with laughter and conversation. Slowly, the bond between Ryan and the boys grew stronger. But as they prepared to return home, another revelation came to light, one that none of them could have anticipated. During a follow-up visit with Dr. Patel, she mentioned something unusual in Ethan's test results. "His genetic markers show signs of advanced modification," she explained carefully. "It's not something we typically see in cases like his." "What does that mean?" Ryan asked, his brow furrowing. Dr. Patel, hesitated before responding. It suggests that Ethan's condition may have been artificially induced, possibly through experimental procedures conducted without proper oversight. The room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. Laura gripped the armrest of her chair, her knuckles turning white. Experimental procedures, what are you talking about? Dr. Patel sighed. There have been whispers in the scientific community about unethical experiments involving genetic engineering. If Ethan's DNA has been altered, it's possible he was part of such a program. Ryan's mind raced. Who would do something like that, and why? I don't know, Dr. Patel admitted. But if I were you, I'd look into any research or programs connected to your past. Sometimes these things leave traces. On the flight back to New York, the mood was somber. Ryan stared out the window, lost in thought. Laura sat beside him, holding Ethan close, while Liam sketched absent-mindedly in his notebook. Once home, Ryan wasted no time launching an investigation into his own company. He combed through records, interviewed employees, and dug deep into obscure divisions he had long ignored. What he uncovered shocked him to his core. Buried within his corporation's research department was evidence of secret experiments involving genetic manipulation. The projects had been funded under the guise of advancing human health, but were actually aimed at creating enhanced individuals for undisclosed purposes. Worse still, someone within the company had used Laura's biological samples, collected years ago during a college study, to create genetically modified embryos. Ryan confronted his chief scientist, demanding answers. The man stammered and evaded, but eventually confessed. The experiments had been authorized by a shadowy board member whose identity was hidden behind layers of secrecy. As Ryan pieced everything together, anger burned inside him. Not just at the betrayal, but at himself. How could he have let this happen under his watch? Determined to make things right, Ryan dismantled the entire research division, firing everyone involved. He vowed to expose the truth and hold those responsible accountable. In the weeks that followed, Ryan threw himself into advocacy work, pushing for stricter regulations on genetic experimentation. He became a vocal critic of corporate greed and unethical science, using his wealth and influence to fight for change. Through it all, his relationship with Laura and the boys continued to evolve. The ordeal brought them closer, forging bonds that felt unbreakable. Though challenges remained, they faced them together, as a family. One evening, as Ryan tucked Ethan and Liam into bed, he paused to reflect on how far they'd come. From strangers to teammates, from broken pieces to something whole. No matter what happens next, he whispered, kissing each boy on the forehead, we'll get through it, together. And for the first time in years, Ryan truly believed it. Months had passed since Ryan uncovered the truth about the unethical experiments within his company. The scandal made headlines across the country, shaking the business world to its core. For once, however, Ryan didn't care about the media frenzy or public opinion. His focus was on one thing, and one thing only: making sure Ethan, Liam, and Laura were safe and cared for. The changes in Ryan's life were undeniable. He stepped away from day-to-day operations at his company, handing over control to trusted executives while he dedicated himself to advocacy work. He founded an organization aimed at regulating genetic research and protecting individuals from exploitation. It was a cause close to his heart, born out of guilt, but fueled by love for his sons. At home, things began to feel different too, better. Ryan had moved Laura and the boys into his penthouse temporarily, wanting to be closer to them as they navigated this new chapter together. At first, Laura resisted, worried about becoming too dependent on him. But Ryan insisted, promising that it wasn't charity, it was family. Slowly, their lives started blending seamlessly. Mornings became a routine of laughter and chaos. Ryan helping Ethan pick out clothes, Liam begging for pancakes instead of oatmeal, and Laura rolling her eyes playfully as she tried to keep everyone on schedule. Evenings were quieter, filled with board games, movie nights, and conversations that went long after the boys had fallen asleep. One evening, as Ryan prepared dinner in the kitchen, he glanced over at the boys sitting at the dining table. They were working on a puzzle together, their heads bent close as they argued good-naturedly over which piece fit where. "Dad, do you think dinosaurs liked puzzles?" Liam asked suddenly, looking up with wide eyes. Ryan chuckled, stirring the pasta sauce. "I don't know, buddy, maybe they did. They were pretty smart." Ethan chimed in, holding up a corner piece triumphantly. If they didn't like puzzles, they wouldn't have survived so long. Laura, who had been leaning against the doorway, laughed softly. "That's some solid logic right there." Ryan smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest he hadn't known was possible. These moments, simple, ordinary, imperfect, were what mattered most. After dinner, the four of them gathered on the couch to watch a movie. Ethan curled up next to Ryan, resting his head on his shoulder while Liam sprawled out on the floor with a blanket. Laura sat beside Ryan, her expression thoughtful. "You've changed," she said quietly during a quiet part of the film. Ryan looked at her surprised. "Is that a bad thing?" "No," she replied. "It's just different. You're not the same person you were when we broke up." "I hope not," Ryan said honestly. "I've made a lot of mistakes, Laura. I hurt you. I ignored my responsibilities, but I'm trying to be better. For them." He nodded toward the boys. Laura studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I see it, and I appreciate it, but—" She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "It's not just about being better for them. You deserve happiness, too, Ryan. We all do." Her words lingered in the air, leaving Ryan unsure of how to respond. He wanted to tell her that he was happy, that having her and the boys back in his life brought him more joy than anything else ever had. But he also knew there was still so much to work through. Trust took time, especially after everything they'd been through. The next morning, Ryan woke early and decided to take the boys to Central Park again. It had become a favorite spot for them, a place where they could run free and forget about doctor's appointments and corporate scandals. As they walked along the paths, Ethan stopped suddenly, pointing at a squirrel perched on a tree branch. "Look, Dad, it's hiding nuts for winter." Ryan knelt down beside him. "Smart little guy, huh? Always planning ahead." Ethan grinned. "Just like us," Ryan laughed, ruffling his hair. "Exactly like us." Later that afternoon, as they returned home, Laura greeted them at the door with news. "Dr. Patel called," she said. "Ethan's latest test results are back. Everything looks stable." Relief washed over Ryan's face. "That's amazing," he said, pulling her into a hug. For the first time in months, it felt like they could finally breathe easy. Ethan's condition was manageable now thanks to the treatments and medications provided by Dr. Patel. While the road ahead might still hold challenges, they faced them with confidence and unity. That evening, Ryan hosted a small dinner party. Not the extravagant affairs he used to throw, but something intimate and meaningful. He invited Laura's parents, who had flown in to visit, along with a few close friends. The penthouse buzzed with laughter and conversation, as everyone celebrated the healing and growth of a fractured family. As dessert was served, Ryan stood up, raising his glass. "I just want to say thank you to all of you for being here tonight. But mostly I want to thank these three," he said, gesturing to Laura and the boys. "They've taught me what really matters: love, trust, and second chances." Laura smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. Ethan and Liam cheered loudly, earning giggles from everyone around the table. After the guests left, Ryan tucked the boys into bed, reading them a story until their eyelids grew heavy. When he returned to the living room, Laura was waiting for him, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "You did good today," she said softly. "So did you," Ryan replied, sitting beside her. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city lights sparkle outside the window. Finally, Laura spoke. "Do you think we can make this work? Really work?" Ryan turned to face her, his expression serious. "I don't just think it, I believe it. We've already come so far, Laura. Together we can handle anything." Laura nodded, reaching out to take his hand. "Then let's keep going, one step at a time." And as they sat there, holding on to each other and the promise of a brighter future, Ryan realized something important. Redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building a better tomorrow. With Ethan and Liam asleep down the hall, and Laura by his side, Ryan knew he had everything he needed. His empire no longer defined him, his family did. And for the first time in years, he felt truly whole.